Mr. Secretary General, thank you very much for joining us at TRT World. There's this refugee inflow through the Aegean Sea, and NATO has taken some role. Can you tell us what you're doing as a NATO to stop this flow of refugees into Europe?
NATO is working with the international community to address the challenges related to the high number of migrants and refugees coming from North Africa, the Middle East. We have to address the root causes, and one of the reasons why NATO is working with countries in the region, also from Afghanistan, Iraq, Jordan, but also North Africa, is to help them stabilize their own countries. If they are more stable, we are more secure, and we also address the root causes of the migrant and refugee crisis. On top of that, we have also participated in the efforts of Turkey and the European Union to cut the lines of illegal migration across the Aegean Sea. And that has been a success. We have been able to contribute to a significant reduction in the illegal crossings. And I think that has been a good example of how NATO can work together with the European Union.
So what is the importance of Turkey for NATO?
Turkey is a highly valued ally, and Turkey plays an essential role for many reasons. One reason is the strategic location of Turkey, a Black Sea nation close to Ukraine, Crimea, the more assertive Russia in the north, but also, of course, bordering Iraq, Syria, and Turkey being the NATO ally most affected by terrorism, turmoil stemming from the south, Iraq and Syria. And I welcome very much the strong contributions of Turkey to NATO. And Turkey is a highly valued ally which contributes in many ways to our collective security. NATO stands in solidarity with Turkey, and Turkey has suffered many terrorist attacks, and Turkey is the ally most affected by the violence and the turmoil in Iraq and Syria. And therefore I welcome that Turkey has stepped up its effort to fight terrorism. Every nation, and of course also Turkey, has the right to defend itself. And I welcome also that Turkey, together with other NATO allies, especially the United States, now are also coordinating their efforts in Syria in the fight against terrorism.
Is Russia a big threat as it was during the Cold War for NATO? What are your thoughts on it?
We see a more assertive Russia. We see a Russia that has implemented a substantial military buildup over several years, and also Russia which has been willing to use military force to change borders and to annex a part of a neighboring country, Crimea, Ukraine. NATO has to respond, and we have responded by increasing our military presence in the eastern part of the alliance, and also by increasing the readiness and the preparedness of our forces. Having said that, I think it's important to understand that Russia is our neighbor. Russia is there to stay, and we have to continue to strive for a more constructive and cooperative relationship with Russia. And we have to keep channels for political dialogue open, and that's exactly what NATO is doing. We are keeping the channels for political dialogue open with Russia, since Russia is our neighbor.
In that respect, what do you think about this close cooperation now that's emerging between Russia and Turkey?
I welcome the enhanced and closer cooperation and dialogue between Russia and Turkey. After the downing of the Russian plane over Turkey last fall, I was very concerned about that the tensions could increase and become and we could see a very difficult relationship between Russia and Turkey. And I actually, after the downing last fall, called for direct dialogue between Moscow and Ankara, Turkey. So as long as we stay strong, as long as we stay united in the NATO alliance, I welcome also political dialogue with Russia.
The US elections, presidential elections, are coming up, and Mr. Trump has questioned the relevancy of NATO. He says it may not be worth having NATO around. What do you tell Mr. Trump, does he have a point?
So I will not be part of the US election campaign. It's for the people of America to decide who's going to be the next president. What I can do is to say what matters for NATO. And a strong NATO is good for Europe, but it's also good for the United States. And I think we have to remember that the only time that NATO has invoked our collective defense clause, Article 5, was after an attack on the United States in 9/11/2001. And many Turkish soldiers, but also soldiers from other European NATO allies and Canada, have been in Afghanistan as a direct response to an attack on the United States. And more than 1,000 European soldiers have paid the highest price, have lost their lives in this operation, which was in defense of the United States after the 9/11 attack. So we appreciate very much that the United States is present in Europe, contribute to the security, and is a guarantor of our collective security in Europe. But NATO is also good for the United States, so we stand stronger together. And let me also underline that our security guarantees, they're not conditioned. They are absolute. So NATO is there to defend all allies against any threat. And that's the message which is important for me as Secretary General of NATO.